I have touched so little grass in the course of the last few days that I actually don't remember what it looks like. So I use Git a lot in the course of the job I do in real life. Git is essentially version control software in so much as it takes a repository of files and records every change that gets committed to them. If you have a folder that has a bunch of text files and you change one of those files and then tell Git to record that you did that, there will be a point in the timeline where, okay, it used to be like this, and a point in the timeline where, now it's like this. I've been thinking about it a lot in particular recently in the context of my Galpal software. Oh, what's Galpal? Well, I'm very glad you asked. It's a Discord bot I'm working on. You can download v0.1 of it for free off of GitHub right now. And could nation projects work on top of it? Here's how I could see it working. You start, as many countries do, with a constitutional document. This sets out how the government works, what branches of government exist to do what laws the government is allowed to make, what body reviews these laws, and so on, yada yada yada. This video isn't about how best to set up your constitutional government so that it's most or least likely to end up being super corrupt. Dealer's choice on that as far as I'm concerned. What's important is that it's clear who is allowed to propose laws and who is allowed to promulgate them. To clarify what I mean by promulgate in this context, I should first go into a little bit of detail about how a shared Git repository generally works. If you already know how Git works and just want to get to the politics, you can skip to this timecode either by just clicking to it or by using the timestamp in the description. For those of you still with us, when you start a Git project with a group, you start with the central repository. You can call this repository whatever you like, though I like to use develop because I think it sounds cool, and I'm going to use that to refer to it from now on, so keep crying. So you have this central repository called develop, and develop will always contain what's essentially the official, formal, definitive, put it out into the world version of whatever project it is you're working on. Because it's the definitive edition, and because of A, the fact that the system will get screwed up if two people are trying to change the same file at the same time, and 2, the potential for malicious actors if you're going open season on allowing anyone to make changes to it. You don't want to allow just anybody to change it whenever it takes their fancy to do so. Instead, you use a regulated system called pull requests, or merge requests, depending on what version of Git you're using, but functionally they do the same thing. To make changes to develop, you need to clone develop into a new branch. This branch is essentially a version of develop that you have access to and to which you can make changes. When you've made the changes you want to make and you're happy with them and you think the world is now a better place for them, you want them to get into develop, because the world isn't going to get your off-to-the-side version, it's going to get the definitive edition. So to get your changes into develop, you make a pull request. A Git pull request will observe all of the changes you've made and committed to your branch, compare them to develop, and if it's happy that it doesn't break anything, it will submit it for review. It can break things if you've tried to change something that someone else is also changing at the same time, but that's a bit beyond the scope of this and unlikely to happen in the nation project context anyway. In any case, at that point, whoever's responsible for reviewing it can give it the okay, and then once it's been given the okay, whoever's responsible for putting it into develop can merge it, at which point it enters the definitive record and is officially in the release version of the project. So, getting back to the original question, what does that have to do with promulgation? Promulgation is the legal process by which a law is announced. Generally, that announcement is the point at which the law is considered to be in effect. In Git terms, if we're saying that the laws are set through the pull request process, merging them into develop is the point at which they can be considered to be promulgated. This is why it's important that your constitution draws a distinction between which government officials are allowed to propose laws, that is, to create pull requests with new laws or modified laws in them, and which to promulgate them. That is, to move them into develop and make them officially binding. In this context, the people capable of proposing laws would be the people you'd allow to submit and approve pull requests, and maybe you only allow pull requests to be merged once enough people approve of it to simulate some kind of parliamentary voting system. You know, if only there was some way of automating a parliamentary voting system in a Discord server without needing to do any manual recording. Oh yeah, interesting about that, I'm actually making a Discord bot. The people capable of promulgating laws would be the people you'd allow to merge pull requests into develop. This merging process is what updates develop, in this case the definitive version of the law, with the new changes that have been proposed and presumably approved on. There are rules that you can use to enforce certain limitations on GitHub users so that merging can't happen until approval has also happened, but to some extent this process will rely a little bit on the honor system. This is really all there is to it, but it comes with a variety of fun possibilities if you are a political science student. At the base level, it means that individual legislators can have their own version of the law, which they can tinker with and then propose changes to without breaking the core definitive one, which would potentially streamline the micronational legislative process and make it clearer what modifications to existing law are occurring and what new laws are being put up. Uniquely, it also means that if one population group within the nation project decides they don't like the direction the government is taking, they can take their own branch of the repository and declare it the definitive version of a different country. Kind of like what happened with Ethereum and Ethereum Classic, only without using the same amount of power as Finland. This element in particular is the thing that made me want to write this video at all, because I think the prospect of people hating the government so much they copy a bunch of PDFs and make their own government is very funny. There are limitations to this scheme though. While I personally found Git eventually fairly easy to learn, you do need to learn it in order to engage with it effectively, which could cause people to bounce off of the project entirely if they're told they have to download software and learn a bunch of lame terminology like merge and fork and among us. It's also not really useful outside of the legislative and executive processes either. While it's very useful for keeping track of the state of the law, including for instance, executive proclamations and the like, it's not that helpful for provisioning public services, i.e. enabling the average citizen, such as they exist in the micronational sphere, to engage with the government in a meaningful, non-legislative way. For this sort of thing, websites through providers like WordPress or the like are still more practical. In short, is Git a better solution for nation project legislation than the most popular current system, which is to say making a Discord server and just debating a set of PDFs until legislation happens? Probably not. It's almost certainly much faster and easier to do it the existing popular way. It's just a thought that I couldn't get out of my head, and now you have to deal with the 6 or so minute video that came out as a result.